Well, I know everyone's favorite question is what do I need to do in order to get legal? So I know you're excited about this conversation, but probably not really. But it is necessary. And so I want to walk you through multiple things that you need to think through and to plan for and just the legalities of getting a brand new church up and going. So I'll walk you through step by step, try to give you a little bit of an understanding what that means and even how to think about this as you kind of move forward. First of all, the first thing you want to do is you want to pick a church name. And so this is something you want to pay attention to. There was a season, a church culture, I don't know how else to describe it, where everybody wanted to come up with kind of the cool, flashy, either Latin or Greek name. I want to encourage you, don't do that. Remember, clear is better than clever. And if people don't understand what you are, let alone understand that you're a church and what kind of church, they're not coming. And so you want to be as clear as you possibly can to help people understand that. For instance, I had a friend that decided to move from one state into the Phoenix metro area. He didn't grow up there, decided to plant a church there, and called his name based on a Latin phrase. And I'll just leave it there. But the Latin phrase, very popular. There's still churches around today that use that phrase. But one of the things that he didn't understand was where he landed in the city was that high school where they chose to meet in had two major different demographics. Had a very wealthy white community that sent their kids to that high school, and then it had a more impoverished Mexican heritage and ethnicity group of people that also sent their kids. And so a very split community, to kind of describe it that way. And nobody actually understood what his name of his church meant. Those that were white thought that this was a Spanish church. Those that were Spanish speakers didn't understand what this was all about, but they knew it wasn't a Spanish church, and he couldn't understand why he wasn't gaining traction in that community. Once he changed his name, there began to become traction because people began to understand what they were and what they were for. So you want to be very careful, be thoughtful when it comes to your name. But again, don't focus so much on being clever that as a result, you sacrifice the clarity around it. The second is depending on your timetable, you may want to look at just trademarking your name. There are certain names that because they have been trademarked, like you will not be allowed to use, or you'll get a cease and desist letter from their lawyer. And so you want to take some time. You want to do a little bit of research, and if you're kind of questionable about your name, and you know it may be a little bit before you actually file some of the more of the legal paperwork. Super easy. It's about one page. It may be a little different based on what state you're in, but you can quickly trademark that name. Why that's important? I've worked with planters in the past where they literally picked their name, began marketing, put all this money into online marketing and even in person, got their entire setup ready to go in their portable situation. And then a week before their grand opening, got a cease and desist letter from another church down the street. Well, not necessarily down the street, but not that far away in their community. It said that name is part of our name and you can't use it. And immediately, the week before their grand opening, all of their signage, all the marketing was now irrelevant because they couldn't use it anymore. I don't want that to happen to you. And so pay attention to this. Go ahead and go through the process and trademark the name. At some point, you're going to then need to establish what I kind of dub an advisory team. This would be a triad of people. One of them will be you, and then you need two other people. If you've got very trustworthy people that you've walked with and discipled for a long time that are there within your congregation, you can utilize them. But I would also encourage you to consider using maybe a pastor from outside of your community, other pastoral friends that could be that. And they basically serve as the legal officers to the paperwork that you're going to need to be filing. Then you're going to need to write your bylaws. And there is help out there. You can actually go to my resources page at thechurchguru.org, and I have a free kind of white label bylaws to at least help you get started and help you think through some of the important things that you want to include when you do your bylaws. Now, there's two terms that we tend to use synonymously when we talk about bylaws. One is bylaws and the other is constitution. I want to encourage you for the long haul to avoid using the term constitution. They act as the same thing, but in some reason in people's minds, and when you begin to introduce membership or the decision makers, because of the term constitution, the constitution is not changeable in a lot of people's minds. And so they'll have a difficult understanding of being able to adjust, adapt, and change the Constitution based on the size and what's going on in the context of the church. Bylaws, much easier. And so I would encourage you just use the terminology bylaws. Next step, you want to get incorporated. And again, you do this at the Secretary of State website. It's not difficult. There are a few nuances based on which state you are as to what the requirements are. Some of them will require maybe 2 officers. Some require 3 officers to sign off on that paperwork. I know at this point, some people begin to sweat and they're trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? How do I manage this? Is this something that I can do? The reality is when it comes to your incorporation papers, this is something you can do. It's not terribly difficult. This is an area I would not spend a lot of extra cash on in getting your church actually officially incorporated with your state. Are there people out there that you can hire to do this? Absolutely. But even if you're going to question it, I don't necessarily know how to do this, connect with a friend who's pastor in church, ask to see their incorporation papers, and you can probably almost word for word copy it down or at least get a basic idea of what you need to include in order to get officially incorporated. Once you are incorporated, this is when it gets fun. Now you can actually apply with the IRS to have your EIN or your Federal Employment Identification Number. This is the thing that allows you to actually open up an official bank account. You will not be able to open up your bank account to handle the proceeds coming in officially to your church until you have that EIN. And again, you've got to be incorporated and be an approved incorporation with the state and before you can apply with the IRS to get your EIN. It's not difficult. You can get it very quickly, and they literally will turn it over immediately through digital, email communication. And so you can apply for it, and literally within minutes, you can have your EIN. At some point, based on what your state requirements are, you may need to hold kind of a triad meeting and then file maybe some official paperwork or minutes with the state representing the fact that we're an entity. Now, it's also helpful to know most states require at least a yearly filing of some type of minutes that show the state that you are still an active corporation, that you haven't gone default, that you're not, all of a sudden you've closed your doors, but that you're still active, and so they'll list you accordingly. Now, once you've gone through the incorporation process, you've established your EIN, you've written the bylaws, now's the time in which you can apply for 501c3 status with the IRS. This is what officially in the eyes of the government says, yes, you are a nonprofit entity and good to operate as so. This one's a little bit more tricky. Majority of people that do this on their own get it rejected the very first time. And it can take around 6 months for the IRS to process the legal paperwork in order for you to actually get this status. If you're going to pay for any of the legal filings or legal paperwork, this would be the one that I encourage you to do it. I did it for our first church plant. It was a lot of work. Second time, I decided I'm not going to do it. And I actually hired somebody to file the paperwork on our behalf. Both times we were able to pass the first time, but again, it's nice having somebody that they do this on a regular basis. They know the language, they know the things in order to file so that you don't get delayed because it got rejected and you have to, resubmit down the road. And sometimes it can get rejected multiple times before it actually gets to be official. Now, here's the thing. In the U.S., it is not a requirement for a church to actually file 501c3 status with the government. I encourage it, because there's a couple things. It shows a level of credibility with people that come to your church, that you are operating by high standards in the way that finances and accounting are taking place. At the same time, it is the thing that would open the doors for you to be able to receive any type of grant. Not having it, you may miss out on grant opportunities when they come around the corner. Number 9, we talked about already, you need to open up your bank accounts, and then you can begin to obtain a post office box. So you want to get a PO box, especially if you're in a portable situation. This will be very, very helpful. Now, when it comes to filing for the 501c3, one of the things that you need to recognize is it'll ask for your address. You do not want to put a PO box as the address to the 501c3 when you're filing that paperwork. That tends to be a flag and tends to be one of the reasons why paperwork will get rejected the first time around. So if you can use another church's address, That would be a better way to do, or another nonprofit's address that you have a good working relationship versus even using your home address. That will help you in that process. Then once you get your IRS status, now you can apply for state sales exemption. This will save your church money in the long term. You want to make sure you obtain the necessary insurance. Even if you're in a portable rental situation, you need to have renter's insurance. And I would make sure that your rental insurance actually includes coverage over any type of mobile trailer that you would store your equipment in. I've heard nightmare stories of churches being broken into, their equipment being stolen, and it wasn't actually included in their policy, but they didn't know that at the time. And as a result, they were out of luck. And they had to figure out where to come up with the money in order to quickly replace the equipment that they had now recently lost. So you want to make sure you work with somebody that is used to working with churches, even used to working with church plants. Brotherhood Mutual is a great company, and they work with a lot of churches around the country, and they would probably be my go-to recommendation when it comes to insurance companies to make sure that you're adequately covered. You want to finalize your financial record keeping. How are you going to keep books? Pastor, you need to do everything you possibly can to get your hands out of the money as quickly as possible. There are some great organizations out there. One of my favorites is Church Plant Solutions. It's actually created as an accounting bookkeeping firm from a former church planter. So not only did he have corporate accounting experience before he planted a church, now he's actually doing this full time and helping churches all around the country. Church Plant Solutions, and let them know that Lee Stevenson sent you their way. But that's just the helpful tip. At some point, you need to develop a process to background check all those people that are actually working with your children and youth. That is a non-negotiable. If something were to happen, forbid it would, but if something did happen to a child or a youth on church property or at a church event, and you haven't done your due diligence in proving the fact that you've done everything to background check this, your church will be shut down. There is no tolerance in our world, and there is no tolerance in the court system today for that level of negligence. And we are even at a point now that no matter what volunteer comes forward, even if it's a guest services member that works on Sunday morning, we background check them. And the reason for that is they're still interacting with minors even when they come through the door. And we just want to go above and beyond when it comes to showing the fact that we've done our due diligence. Then you're going to need to obtain a CCLI licensing. The CCLI licensing is the thing that allows you to sing the music that you put up on a screen and sing together corporately. It is not that expensive, about $100 a year, but that is the thing that allows you to legally use those songs and make sure that the artists are getting their due as well in the process of their recording and writing. Now, you do need to obtain a separate license if you're going to do any type of media streaming online. So in other words, if you're going to Facebook Live your worship experience, and that includes the music, you have to obtain another license through the CCLI that allows you to do that legally and allows you to stream that music. And then lastly, at some point, you probably is wise, especially if you look at sending out bulk levels of mail, to acquire a bulk mail rate through your local post office. But there's 16 steps of things that will help you get legal and be on the right side of what is required for you to be a healthy corporation, a legal corporation here in your state and in our country. You can do this. I know it may be overwhelming, but these are necessary steps that you need to take.